Welcome to Food Farm Talk on CFRU and 93.3 FM in Guelph, Ontario, Canada, and on podcast. This show today is a conversation mostly with Stuart Wright, the incoming president of the Ontario Soil and Crop Improvement Association. About him, his family's farm, and sustainability on their farm. I'm Paul Smith, and I'm the host of a series of shows on farm sustainability. Please follow the podcast on our Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook accounts. Today we're talking with Stuart Wright, who's a dairy and cash crop farmer and farms north of Arthur with his family. Stuart's the incoming president of the Ontario Soil and Crop Improvement Association, or Soil and Crop for short. Stuart is taking over from Les Nichols at the annual meeting of Soil and Crop, February 5th and 6th in London. Sustainable agriculture is mostly about people and how they work together and learn together. The large network of people and organizations work together to innovate, develop, fine-tune, and promote adoption of sustainable practices. There are farm organizations like Soil and Crop, the Innovative Farmers Association, and the Ecological Farmers Association that try new practices and transplant ideas from other jurisdictions. And there are university researchers at the University of Guelph and elsewhere that study practices and issues to solve problems. Government organizations like the federal and provincial agriculture ministries and conservation authorities do research, and they also provide education and incentives to promote adoption of sustainable practices. Other farm organizations are also involved in identifying and promoting and researching sustainability, whether it's the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, Christian Farmers, National Farmers Union, or commodity organizations in grains, fruits, vegetables, or livestock. Academics talk about an adoption and diffusion process that takes innovative practices from that experimental stage to eventually broad-scale adoption. Soil and Crop is part of that system. As you'll hear, since 1939, Soil and Crop has been promoting innovative thinking about crop production and soil conservation. This on-farm research and experimentation is really key to how Soil and Crop works. Soil and Crop has those strong relationships with researchers at Guelph and other places, and in federal and provincial ministries and departments. Soil and Crop also delivers federal and provincial education incentive programs for farmers. We'll be hearing from Stuart about his farm and how he manages crops and livestock to improve soil health and water quality, but also about how he learned from others and tested practices on his farm. Grand River Conservation Authority gave Stuart a watershed award a few years back for that kind of work that he's been doing. So I'm here with Stuart Wright. We're going to talk a bit about Stuart and his family and his farm and Soil and Crop Improvement Association. So Stuart, why don't you start us off with just talking a bit about yourself and your family and farm operation?
Yeah, we farm in the north end of Wellington County between Arthur and Mount Forest. My family's been there. Well, my son is, he's come into the operation the last couple of years. He'll be the fifth generation. We're a dairy and cash crop operation. Just built a new robot barn. That's the latest addition. But we work approximately 1,000 acres between what we own and what we rent. In the past, I worked with my my older brother and my younger brother. And as I said before, my son is now coming into the business, and we will sort of take it forward. But they're still definitely they still are there helping out. That's kind of a basic outline of.
And how many cows do you milk?
Right, currently we're milking about 70, 75. We have two robots, so we will have the capacity to milk 120 eventually. But we're building on that.
So you obviously got interested in soil and conservation work in your work through the Soil and Crop, but obviously on your own farm too. So maybe you can talk a bit about how that interest developed.
First thing I really remember was back in the days when I can remember when everything was moldboard plowed. Nobody thought twice about it. You just moldboard plowed. Then I'm trying to think. I think it was maybe in the mid '80s where chisel plow, soil saver, whatever you want to call it, came into the farm world, and I remember competitions back then where everybody would take their chisel plow to a certain location, and of course at first everybody thought it's got to be like plowing, so you got to make it all, the dirt has to be black, otherwise you're doing something wrong. And then we were educated that no, that's not what you're trying to do. You're trying to leave residue on top of the ground.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing I remember as far as soil health, and that was, like, say, in maybe the late 80s or into the 90s. And then as time went by, somebody from Soil and Crop came to me one day and asked me if I wanted to be part of the Forage Masters competition. And I took part in that. And shortly after that, I was asked to be on the board of Wellington County Soil and Crop. And so I sat on the board, and I think probably the next thing that really made me get more of an awareness of soil health, soil erosion, that sort of thing, was when I became president and started going to the OSCIA AGMs, the annual meetings, and they would have higher profile speakers, sometimes from the US or Europe or whatever, I think maybe once or twice, and that's when I started to really get more drawn into it and think more about it. Farm Smart was the other thing. That's a local, it started in Golden Horseshoe region of Soil and Crop. Heartland region, my area of Wellington, Waterloo, Huron, and Perth, they got involved in that. And then there was more speakers came in from, and that's just sort of how it all started for me.
So you learned a lot of this just through being involved in the organization.
Exactly.
And that was a social thing as well as a.
Yeah, it started out when I was asked to join the local group. It was, really more or less just to make a contribution to my own county, my own area, but then it sort of grew from that, and I don't think I was aware of not only the basics of soil health, but I was educated in that, but I also got educated in how many other people were interested in this, and honestly, since the time I started, just grown, and now I see more and more people, more and more farm groups with a bigger awareness of.
So given that's several decades of developing your knowledge, and can you kind of lay out the kinds of things you do now that you didn't do back in the 80s?
I would say we went from, thinking that the chisel plow was the ultimate in, soil conservation, discovering about no-till. We're not pure no-tillers now, but we've had a no-till drill, which thanks to the programs at Ontario Soil and Crop, we got some help in purchasing our no-till drill. But yeah, it sort of went from conservation tillage to no-till. We started off no-tilling wheat, which is one of the easiest things to do. Then we branched out into no-tilling soybeans and to corn stalks. And there was a time when we thought no-till corn would be a non-starter, but in the last few years I've started playing with no-till corn, and I'm seeing that there's potential there. Even though most people have actually gone to strip till. I've seen a lot of my neighbors adopt strip till in the last few years, and they're liking it. It's successful for them for the most part. But I still think, I still wanted to kind of push on that no-till corn sort of.
You haven't branched out into strip till.
I've
sticking to no-till.
Experimented with a little bit. I'm still kind of pushing more on trying to make no-till work, or at least finding where it will work. What number one is good drainage. I've certainly in all I would say soil health practices, I'd really kind of emphasize that drainage does make a big difference. It gives you some options that with no-till and different types of tillage, I think that are different types of reduced tillage or no-till options that work much better in well-drained ground than in non-well drained ground. And so that's kind of how it's gone from the reduced till to no till, and now trying to find, how far you can go with no till. I guess that would be the...
So a lot of it with corn is the residue, managing the residue too, eh?
Yeah, there's that's part of it for sure, and part of it too is I think it probably comes down to patience. Waiting. That ground will dry. It takes longer to dry out. I would say when it's not worked. Of course, now we're cover crops. I know that's a question you're going to ask me later, but a lot of the true cover crop folks will say cover crops will help to dry the soil out a little bit quicker in the spring. In all honesty, we haven't found that to be the case, but we're still working with, maybe we're not using the right type of soil, the right type of cover crops, and that's all part of what we're working with.
So what sort of cover crops, species and mixes are you using for?
We've done, for corn, we actually have been trying a more varied mixture. We have gone to 7 or 8 way mixes. The heart of it is usually oats and radish, but then we'll add things like sunflowers, crimson clover, faba beans, phacelia, those types of things. So where we're planning on no-tilling, we've tried that, and that's like the next step of finding whether that is gonna make the difference, sort of thing.
Yeah. So you're still sort of experimenting with
and we're still terminating in the fall. Even the guys who are true believers, in the cover crop no-till, they always say on your own farm start small.
Right.
And I really think that is. I've working 1,000 acres. I started off with 30 acres, dedicated.
Perfect,
30 acres.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. It's going to be no-till. Doesn't matter whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. It's gonna be no-till. And now we've sort of we're adding some more onto that, and learning as we go. We do where we plan on using light tillage. We will have a more simple, just an oats and radish. So right now our acres that are going into corn are kind of mixed. Some is the multi-species, and I guess technically oats and radish is multi-species, but not really. Yeah, you really couldn't call it. We're just experimenting the last couple years with in corn, like interseeding into corn. We're struggling with that. It would be nice, especially, we're talking here in November when we're trying to get corn off. It would be great to have like a mat of cover crop in that corn to give the soil a little bit more protection.
Yeah.
Getting it established, we struggled, in all honesty. Like soybeans, our cover crop is wheat. That is the good thing about a good rotation is wheat is the star. Well, hay is actually the biggest star when it comes to covering the ground, in my opinion. But wheat is a close second, not only for the fact that you have the ground covered over the winter, but root development that really is positive for the soil.
Yeah, you have a big advantage growing a lot of hay for dairy production, right? So that makes your rotation more complex. Just adds another crop to your rotation. Right?
Yeah, and I think the next question for us is, can we get even more hay? Hay that would maybe be for a cash crop, hay that maybe would be for neighbors. The hay co-op has started up, so that's, and some of these folks, I'll mention Chris Martin and Fritz Tautzmandorf. They've been real leaders in that hay co-op program, and they've got. I'm still looking at that and seeing if that's going to be a fit for us going forward. But
so what's your rotation? If you have hay in for a number of years.
We'll go
rotated out to the corn
3 years of hay, and then corn would be and then go to your corn, soy, wheat. But that's where we're thinking now is like, can we get more hay into the rotation?
So have you noticed improvement in soil quality and soil health as you've been introducing all these different practices and changing your rotation and so on?
In all honesty, like, and there's been a lot of talk on this, the ability to truly measure soil quality. There's a lot of different tests out there. And maybe
Well, I wasn't really
help me
thinking
out,
of the tests, just your own sense of, from digging around, looking for earthworms or the tilth of it, or a more intuitive.
From the time I was started farming, probably, when your ground has been in hay, especially good alfalfa crop, for 3 years, and you give it light tillage, usually before. Some people are no tilling directly into that hay ground, but we'll do light tillage, and it's obvious. The soil tilth is much better. Much better. And I know there was a time when we were buying farms in the past, if they had been in not good shape, our first approach would be number 1, tile drainage, number 2, hay, alfalfa.
Oh yeah.
And
rehab it.
Yeah, and that would really work wonders in our minds, anyways. When you looked at the soil tilth after 3 years of hay, even a couple of years of hay. That's my observation, but it would be interesting. And again, there has been talk in the past of doing a real, genuine, measurable, scientific soil health test where you could follow that and measure it and know that in a tangible way that there really is an improvement there.
So that even soil organic matter, measure that enough to notice any
we
difference
follow
in
that
time?
with our soil tests.
Yeah.
I would say you're kind of catching me off guard here. I should have had a look at those before because I hate to lie. But my feel would be, our soil, a lot of our organic matters are in the 3 to 4 sort of thing, which is respectable, and they seem to be maintaining, especially on our home farm where we do get more hay. I got to believe that we're maintaining at that. I mean, you always want to build. But
and a lot of these new tests like the Haney test and the Cornell system.
Those are the ones that I was thinking.
I know A&L has their own versions of some of that too that they offer, and
and I think that'll maybe be a next step here is getting one that everybody has confidence in, and then really applying that every year and monitoring using a measurable
people are experimenting with it, and I talked to people the Soil Health Coalition out in Erin. They're doing a little bit of that too, measuring different things.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the advantage of being a dairy producer, so you got manure that you can apply to land, which is great because it adds organic matter. It also adds the microbial populations too. So that's you find that's a big advantage.
Yeah. In all honesty, like that's what when I see big yields, or when I hear big yields in my neighborhood or probably anybody else's, if you trace it back, you'll find manure somewhere or an organic amendment, which we've actually, because even with 1,000 acres and 70 cows, there's no way that we can cover all of our ground with manure. So we've we've really tried the last few years to experiment with different organic amendments. We've used Listagrow, which is a processed biosolids type of product, which we really like. We've used compost, green bin compost.
All for municipal.
Peel, region of Peel.
Oh yeah.
We've used that.
That's
We've
good.
used neighbors' manure, hog manure, and we haven't been able to track down any chicken manure, which is quite good. But what they add in terms of organic matter and microbial activity, we're definite believers.
So you're
in
able
that.
to, with all those additional sources, to cover all your land pretty much?
We can't this year. Usually we aim at our wheat acres because it's the summertime. It's when you want to be spreading when the ground is dry, and you're going into that corn crop following that needs a lot of those nutrients. That we can use the combination of organic amendments and cover crops, which Chris Brown from Omafra
Yeah.
has been, she's got lots of information on that. We definitely see as it's complementary, right? You're going to get better root development, a little bit more of the tops. Your root development is number one with your cover crops, but there's certainly no harm in having that biomass on top of the ground that goes back into the soil as well. Although the real heart of it is your root and microbial, the stuff that's happening under the ground. This year we managed to get something on. I think we had 350 acres of wheat. I think there was 100 acres that we didn't. We had cover crop on it. But ideally we like to do the combination.
So you like to add it sort of once in a rotation, is that it? The idea?
Yeah, once in a rotation, and then again we have the advantage of having hay in the rotation, and you can get some, especially now that we have liquid manure, we can get some a coat of liquid manure on after first cut or after second cut, I guess as well, depending on when you want to do it. But it's that wheat timing. We have put on manure is great, but it's challenging to get it. This year we weren't able to get any manure on in the spring because the ground was just so wet. We just didn't think we could get out there. We were in the fortunate position of having plenty of storage, so we were able to hold off until we actually applied it after first cut hay. But the challenge of manure is sometimes you're in the position where you've got to go out there in the spring, and sometimes that obviously has negative compaction effects. We're lucky that we're at the stage where we do have that extra storage, but I know it is a challenge for other people, and we've been in that position ourselves where we just had to go out and put some on in the spring, maybe before we wanted to. So those are the challenges. But everybody, I think, knows those are challenges of manure. It's really this challenge of storage that people have to take on.
So that's a good segue into sort of the whole sort of nutrient management 4Rs topic area, because that's a big thing now with Lake Erie and so on, and we're kind of in the Lake Erie watershed, not at the western end, obviously, so it's not as crucial, but so you got to manage your manure, and you have to manage fertilizer. So what do you think of this new right time, right place, right form?
I think it's getting adopted. I know I have the opportunity to sit as the Ontario Soil and Crop rep on the CCA board. There's been great uptake, I think, with CCAs, with
certified crop advisors.
Certified crop advisors. Yeah. I should specify there. Yeah. Great uptake by the ag input suppliers. Some of them have got their 4R registration now. I should know the details better than I do, but absolutely, probably in the last 5. That's maybe been the thing that's changed the most, or been the top issue is Lake Erie, and of course with Ontario Soil and Crop works with the CCAs through the Farm Health Checkup program and related cost share opportunities. 4Rs are here to stay. I know I find myself asking my agronomist all the time, like, what would a good 4R person do in this situation? Like I wanted to put some fertilizer on next year's soybean ground. I had a bit of wheat ground that was going to soybeans. I'll have some corn ground that's going to soybeans, and she told me that that it's if there's stubble there, it's okay, and provided it's not in a really erodible, negative situation, that's okay. But the point is, I asked, what's the 4R opinion on this, or the appropriate way to do it? Yeah. And I think it's going to become more of a thing that people automatically think about before they do things on their farm.
Seems to be catching on. Well, why don't we go back to talking about the organization, Soil and Crop Improvement Association. as you obviously illustrated by your own experience earlier, that Soil and Crop has been on kind of the leading edge of a lot of the environmental initiatives within agriculture. I'm just wondering what you think about in terms of the longer term of Soil and Crop from here into the future, where you see Soil and Crop taking initiative on new things, or how do you see that evolving?
Certainly what we're hearing is we're getting opportunities to take part in new programs and some on-farm research. There's always been the on-farm research done by our members, and I think that will continue to go on. It's just the natural curiosity of farmers and Soil and Crop members. But I think there's going to be maybe bigger efforts. I've seen over the last number of years just so much more interest in soil health, and not only with Soil and Crop, other farm organizations. Innovative farmers have really shown a lot of interest in soil health, and I think there's just a greater awareness out there. We've got advocates now like Rob Black, Senator Rob Black. Yeah. And I see him taking up that kind of cause. Yeah. And I got to believe that Ontario Soil and Crop is going to be requested more and more to help out with programs to sort of continue that the opportunity we can give people to connect with our members.
Okay, well, that's probably a good spot to stop. Thanks, Stuart, for coming in, and it's a good conversation, and obviously you're very knowledgeable. It's great that you kind of have this sort of, through your career almost, it's sort of, you've been involved in Soil and Crop and learned all this stuff through the organization, and now you're contributing in a very big way to it. So
yeah, well, I hope I'm contributing. I certainly want to. I think I do. I am in the position where I think I owe. It's time to do some paying back here for what I've learned over the years, and I certainly hope I can do that in the next year as president of Ontario Soil and Crop. And I want to thank you for the opportunity for ramble on about this, that, and the other thing.
Well, it's always fun to talk with these things, right?
Yeah,
it is fun, and we get to share this with people across the province too. So that's a cool thing.
Yeah, that's right. And you had mentioned that you're getting good uptake on this podcast, and there's real interest out there. And I'm just an old farmer. I love talking farming, and you got a chance to talk to a lot of old farmers over here, and some young ones too. And of course, we're very excited that we are getting a new young group of people involved in agriculture and in Ontario Soil and Crop. We have some young, smart provincial directors, and it's good for those of us who are maybe starting to come towards the end of our careers to see that the kind of energy and intelligence and education that the younger group is bringing.
Yeah, that's really heartening. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, Stuart.
Thank you
for your
Paul.
Time and effort. So you've heard Stuart Wright talking about his farm and how he manages all aspects of his farm operation to be both profitable and sustainable, using cover crops, crop rotation, manure, compost, reduced tillage, and perennial forages to build the sustainability of their farm and contribute to watershed conservation. You may have thoughts about what you've heard today. Please send us any comments via our social media accounts, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And there's more to learn from information and links that are provided in the show notes on the podcast site. Thanks very much to Stuart Wright. And please tune in for the next show on Food Farm Talk on CFRU 93.3 FM in Guelph, Ontario, Canada, and on podcast on all of your usual podcast platforms. Thanks very much for listening.